Andy's researchers present a country profile on China. The Chinese economy has experienced astonishing growth in the last few decades, which was initiated in 1978 when China started its economic reform. China is now classified as an upper-middle income country by the World Bank, as it has been able to pull hundreds of millions of its citizens out of poverty. China is transitioning from a developing country into a developed country, and is set to overtake the US as the largest economy in the world. Globalization, culture, economic and human development, as well as trade, have all been contributing factors to China's progress. Analysis of these factors provides insights into the benefits of foreign businesses establishing a presence in the Chinese market. The Australia-China relations are characterised by strong trade bonds, with China being Australia's largest trading partner. Therefore, Australian businesses should utilise the strong foundations our country has with China in order to continue growing together as a partnership as well as individual nations.
Globalization is related to the widening, deepening, and speeding up of world interconnectedness in all aspects of contemporary social life. There are two components of globalization: globalization of markets and globalization of production. Globalization of markets refers to the merging of markets into one global marketplace, whereas globalization of production refers to the tendency of firms to source goods and services from countries with lower factor costs. Globalization of markets is able to occur through the drivers of globalization, falling trade and investment barriers, and advancements in technology. Australia has a long history in trading with China, which has resulted in a trusting relationship, where today China is Australia's largest two-way trading partner. Due to the falling investment barriers, and a positive impact of globalization is higher levels of Chinese investment in Australia, resulting in improved economic performance for Australia. However, Australia is struggling to control Chinese investments as they do not want to seem discriminatory, but it will only allow for Beijing to have more control of the extractive and transport infrastructure in Australia when exporting to China in the future. Advancements in technology is another positive of globalization. Through the introduction of the internet, consumers are able to purchase goods from multiple countries in the comfort of their own home, creating one global marketplace. In 2018, Australians spent a whopping $21.3 billion on buying goods online, an increase of 18.7% from 2017. However, it is considered a negative to the Chinese as they believe they need to protect citizens from potentially harmful content through internet censorship, where they have blocked major websites such as Facebook and Google. This would make it much more difficult for an Australian company to expand into the Chinese market, as organisations would not have the same accessibility to the technological resources as they would have in other countries. Many organisations have switched to manufacturing in China, where they are able to produce goods at a much lower cost due to the lower wages. This is why most products you find nowadays are labelled Made in China. A positive of outsourcing to China is that there are more jobs for Chinese citizens who are low-skilled. This results in a decline in poverty. However, there is still a large gap between the rich and the poor, which will be further discussed in this presentation. Outsourcing production allows China to have enhanced political strength. However, Australia is now becoming more anxious and aware of its country's security. Another positive for China is job creation, as more organisations are wanting to move production to save on costs. But unfortunately, this means that for Australians, there are higher levels of unemployment due to outsourcing of production. This may also result in a loss of skills, as Australians are no longer able to put their skills into practice. For example, the car manufacturing industry in Australia has completely moved internationally, resulting in extensive job losses and leaving thousands of people without the opportunity to benefit from their skills. Although job creation and increased levels of employment are important, it results in higher levels of pollution, which puts people all over the world at risk of diseases as it spreads from China. A study conducted by the Global Burden of Disease estimates that air pollution is the fourth highest cause of death and disability combined. Through the analysis of the positive and negative effects of globalization, China can be identified as an overall winner. China's proximity to Australia has allowed them to build a strong trading relationship where they offer protection and work together to help build their own economies. Although there is still an existing gap between the rich and the poor, China's poverty rates are declining through the expansion of organisations into their country and through trading. The poverty headcount ratio has dramatically decreased from 17.2% in 2010 to 3.1% in 2017, or in other words, there were 230 million people in 2010 living under the poverty line of $1.90 a day, which has decreased to 43 million people in 2018. Advancements in China's economy and improvements in poverty rates would not have been possible without the process of globalization.
The determinants of culture are religion, language, education, social structure, political philosophy, and economic philosophy. When comparing religions, it was found that in Australia, Christianity is the most common religion. In China, folk religion is the most common. But what is interesting is that 30% of Australians reported that they had no religion, and similarly, 52% of the Chinese population also reported that they had no religion. However, it should be noted that many Chinese people follow Confucianism, a traditional Chinese philosophy. The 2016 ABS census found that English is the most common language spoken in Australia. However, Mandarin is the second most common language spoken at home by 1 in every 40 Australians. In China, Mandarin is the most common language. However, 49% of the population who speak another language are able to speak fluent English. This means that it could be easy for Australia to expand into China, as there would be many employees that can communicate in either Mandarin or English. In terms of non-verbal communication, Australians are more direct and honest when it comes to speaking. However, there is still a sensitivity in order to remain polite and avoid conflict. This is quite different to the Chinese, who rely more on indirect communication through use of expression, body language, and tone of voice. When it comes to speaking, the Chinese are more ambiguous and have a focus on keeping face. Education in Australia and China are similar in that they both have a compulsory education system. Interestingly, education is Australia's largest services export, and that similarly in China, many international students are studying, making both countries' education systems world-class. When it comes to social structure, China is collectivist, whereas Australia is individualist. Australians don't think of themselves as belonging to a social class, and as such there is a lot of movement between classes. China's social structure, however, is more focused on in-groups, making it harder for lower social classes to move up in the hierarchy. Australia has a democratic political system, whereas China has a communist political system. This means that there is one sole political party in China, currently the Communist Party of China. They lack competitive elections, however they still have similar government structure to Western parliaments. China's command economy means that it is more difficult for them to trade and invest when compared to Australia's market economy. Hofstede's cultural dimensions are able to provide us with a better understanding of the differences and similarities between Australia and China's cultures. On the Power Distance Index, Australia scores 36 and China scores 80. This means that Australia has a low hierarchical structure where managers and superiors rely on their employees for the skills and expertise that they contribute. There is a culture of sharing information through the use of informal communication. In China, the culture is much different. There is a very clear line between managers and employees, where the employees are not encouraged to have aspirations beyond their rank, and there can be an abuse of power by the superiors. Australia's scores are high when it comes to being individualist. People are expected to look after themselves. In organisations, this can translate to being self-reliant and displaying initiative. Hiring and promotions are based on merit and evidence. In contrast, China is highly collectivist. This means that people act more for the society than for themselves. When it comes to hiring and promotions, the Chinese are more likely to give preferential treatment to those who have connections, rather than to the best person for the job. This collectivist culture means that many employees do not have high commitment to the organisation if they aren't in the in-group. Both Australia and China have similar scores for masculinity versus femininity. They are both masculine societies which promote success and education. Chinese and Australians are both seen as having a hard-working culture, and they are proud of their achievements. The uncertainty avoidance score for Australia is intermediate. China has a low score when it comes to uncertainty avoidance. The Chinese lack uncertainty, as can be seen through the use of the Chinese language, which has many ambiguous meanings, and they are adaptive when it comes to dealing with changes. Australians have a short-term orientation. They have respect for traditions such as saving to buy a house. China, however, is long-term focused. They are very pragmatic and have shown their ability to adapt to situations. They have a much stronger focus on saving and investing money, and through their perseverance, they are able to achieve their results. When it comes to indulgence versus restraint, Australians are highly indulgent as a country. They are able to enjoy life and have fun through their positive, optimistic attitudes. There is a higher importance on leisure time and having a work-life balance. China is restrained as a society. There is high levels of pessimism, and unlike Australia, they have a culture that does not value leisure time. Overall, Australia and China have widely different cultures. However, that does not mean that organisations should not expand into China. Australian companies need to be mindful of these cultural differences, whether it be through their organisational structure, management, or business culture, so that they are able to succeed in their ventures.
The level of economic development is measured by gross national income per capita and purchasing power parity. In 2017, the GNI per capita for China was $8,690, but the PPP was $16,760, suggesting that the cost of living in China is lower. Therefore, $8,690 in China would buy as much as $16,760 in the US. Even though the GNI may suggest that China is a relatively poorer country, its economy is already large in absolute terms and growing far more rapidly than those of many advanced nations. In 2010, China became the second largest economy in the world after the US. If both China and the US maintain their current economic growth rates, China will become the world's largest economy in the next decade. Economic activity in China remains sustainable, with GDP growing by 6.9% in 2017. Capital investment and exports have been the foundations for China's growth and development, but the Chinese economy has now reached an important turning point. Focus has been directed to rebalancing the economy through driving more growth from household consumption, as well as addressing the pressures that come from rising inequalities. Human development should also be considered when analysing China's growth and is measured by PPP life expectancy and educational attainment. The Human Development Index is used by the United Nations to measure the progress of a country. The HDI for China is 0.752 points and Australia 0.939 points. Life expectancy for China is 76.4 years and Australia 83.1 years. Chinese students have an average of 13.8 years of schooling, while Australian students have 22.9 years. The GNI per capita for China is $15,270 and for Australia, $43,560. This gives China a ranking of 86, while Australia is ranked third out of 189 countries published. China have made considerable strides in raising the average life expectancy across the country since the reform. Both improvements in infant and adult mortality have led to significant increases in overall life expectancy, which stood at 69 years in 1990 and reached 76.4 years in 2017. China has lifted around 850 million people out of poverty. However, its growth has been uneven. The coastal urban areas have benefited much more than the rural areas. With rising incomes, people can afford better food, healthcare, clothing and shelter. But they are also exposed to more diseases and pollution because so many of them have moved to urbanized cities. China is known to be a manufacturing hub, but labour-intensive industrialisation still requires a basic level of education. In urban China, educational opportunities have improved with time, along with increased demand for education. Education has helped Chinese citizens take advantage of new farming techniques and improve access to off-farm jobs that require literacy and numeracy. However, as the urban areas of China have become more educated, this has led to a disparity between rural and urban areas. This is currently still an issue the Chinese government are addressing by increasing funding for the education sector. There is a strong two-way correlation between economic development and human development within China. Australian firms looking to establish a presence in China should consider both factors in conjunction as they influence each other. Rapidly rising income levels in China and mass migration from rural to urban areas have created an abundantly large middle class, demanding improved housing, cleaner environment, better education, a healthier diet, and enhanced choice of financial services. Tight regulations on energy conservation and environmental protection also presents potential for businesses in Australia to invest in key areas such as advanced manufacturing, energy saving, environmental protection, and modern services in China. China's economic growth is becoming more reliant on domestic consumption. The resulting increase in spending represents a major opportunity for Australian businesses that are able to successfully target their products to an increasingly affluent Chinese public.
Theory of comparative advantage. David Ricardo explains the nation should specialize in producing goods or products in which they produce most efficiently and import all other goods from other countries. It encompasses the idea that both nations through a trading agreement can benefit even if one is more efficient in producing all goods traded than the other. China is among the world's lowest cost producers of textiles, and its raw material, labor costs, energy and environmental protection costs are relatively low compared to those of other nations, putting it in a better position to specialize in this industry compared to other nations. Its large-scale production facilities producing textiles in mass amounts has allowed the nation to benefit from economies of scale across the entire value chain, hence become more cost efficient and enabling China to remain competitive and efficient in this industry. IBIS World estimates that over the next 5 years, exports for China's cotton fabric and yarn manufacturing industry will increase to reach $48.8 billion in 2023, hence bringing in significant revenue growth and contribution to the nation's GDP, making it a favorable industry to specialize in. China should specialize in the electronic goods such as that of computers and mobile phones manufacturing industry when looking to trade, because it has a comparative advantage in this industry. Shenzhen, a city located in the southern-eastern region of China, has progressively evolved to become a global central producer and exporter in the electronics industry. The ability of Shenzhen to become so successful in this industry can be attributed to various factors, including having a strong system to support the manufacturing supply chain of electronic goods and its large production network that allows it to produce mass amounts of products. It has tens of thousands of factories, 5,000 product integrators, and significant amounts of design houses. Exports are forecasted to experience a growth of 5.9% in the next 5 years for China's manufacturing of mobile phones. Exports in this industry are currently high and increasing. The improvement in manufacturing capacities, abilities, and technology of China's local manufacturers are big contributors to this. China continues to be the world's largest and central cell phone production base in the upcoming years. Looking specifically at this electronic good manufactured in China, we can see its valuable economic contribution and China's comparative advantage in its production. Compared with other countries, Australia has a comparative advantage in the mining industry, in particular the production of mineral commodities, hence should specialise in this industry when looking to trade. It includes mining as well as the production of metals such as aluminium, lead, steel, iron, precious metals and minerals, coal and base metals. This comparative advantage stems from a range of factors, including Australia's rich and diverse mineral endowment, with Australia holding some of the world's biggest and highest quality mineral deposits, such as iron ore, allowing it to provide high-quality minerals and metals in greater abundance compared to other countries. Location. Australia is located relatively close to major buyers of mining outputs such as China and Japan. This provides Australia with a cost advantage over competitors such as the US, for which transport costs may be higher due to its longer distance from major markets. Australia is a global leader in its utilisation of well-competitive mining technology and advanced production techniques such as remote operation centres and driverless trucks. In addition, it has a highly skilled workforce in comparison to many mining workforces found in other countries. This enables the industry to increase its productivity and efficiency, contributing to its comparative advantage in this sector. Exports are expected to account for over 70% of the industry's revenue in 2019. With such volume growth, mining exports are forecasted to increase annually throughout the next 5 years to reach $171 billion. Thus, such industry is set to continue to contribute greatly to economic growth, making it a favourable industry to specialise in. Beef industry. Australia is able to possess a comparative advantage in the beef industry. This includes the live cattle industry as well as the beef meat industry. This is due to a number of factors. Proximity of the industry. The industry is mainly based in the northern region of Australia, which is close to many key markets, especially those in Southeast Asia. This allows businesses in the industry to reduce transport costs and provide such exportations more cost efficiently. Australia is also able to specialise in more efficient provision of live animals and beef that is consistent in quality and quantity due to the large industry and stable economy in Australia relative to other nations. In 2018-2019, live cattle exports are expected to be worth $1.3 billion, anticipated to increase 3.2% per year over the next 5 years, making it an attractive industry to specialise in, contributing significantly to the nation's economic growth and GDP. To keep Australia and China's ongoing trade partnership, we believe that any Australian company wishing to expand into China will be successful. However, they do need to take into account the cultural differences, economic growth, and industries that are already present within China. As both countries have opposing social and political structures, an Australian company will need to prioritise the recognition of these differences in order to respectfully move into China and to be accepted. This will benefit the expanding business as it will allow management to develop effective strategies that are suited to their environment and therefore achieve optimal organisational performance. The increase of globalisation will allow both countries to build a strong bond where they can work together to improve both economies, making it easier for an Australian company to expand into China. From our research, we believe the industries most likely to succeed in their ventures are the mining and beef cattle industries. An Australian business wanting to expand into China should consider these industries as they are promptly successful, which will allow the expanding business to earn the most revenue and contribute positively to a nation's economic growth.